With AEW continuing to decline, come with me to a world of fantasy where Tony Khan has stepped aside and left me in charge of All Elite Wrestling. These are the top 10 changes that I would make to AEW. What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Seth Grimes, and today I have been handed the pencil and the book to AEW. I have been handed the keys to the kingdom, if you will. AEW has been steadily on the decline, though we all know for our many years of wrestling fandom that there are ebbs and there are flows to every professional wrestling promotion. Is it all doom and gloom for AEW? Is the sky falling, or is this just a little bit of a down period and then we'll swing back up to an up period? Who knows? Who cares? Really? I do. I'm just playing. But today, we're going to do a little bit of fantasy booking, as I like to do from time to time. And we're going to head to Fantasyland as Tony Khan has hypothetically given me the reins to AEW and said, hey, man, and I wouldn't be the first YouTuber that he's brought on board, by the way, but he hands me the keys and he says, hey, man, fix this shit. You've been complaining about it online? See what you can do. So this is my top 10 list, my 10 things that I would change, that I would do to turn this ship around and make AEW hot again, to make them a competitor again in the industry. And I'm going to throw in a bonus for you as well. These are not necessarily ranked in order. However, do stick around for the very last one, as I do think that one will be the most important key to actually fixing what is at the root of the problem with AEW. So stick around for that. But without further ado, let's hop on into number 10. Before I do, if I could bug you to hit that subscribe button down below if at any point you're watching this and you enjoy what you're watching. With that said, let's move on in to our number 10. The very first change that I'm going to go in and make to AEW is I'm going to set up a booking committee. We will be booking by committee. And it won't be so much a booking committee as in everybody has a say and goes to a vote, but more that there will be a creative team, if you will, or a booking committee. There will be a set team, maybe a couple rotating members, who knows, that will be put into place, that will be sitting around a big creative table and having regular booking meetings, Skype, text, phone, all that shit, to come up with ideas for the AEW roster for the two main shows, Collision and Dynamite. This will have a booking committee that is broken into teams, if you will. There will be a person or a couple people assigned to the tag team division, a person or a couple people assigned to the women's division, to the main event, to the undercard, and so on. That way everybody gets attention, everybody brings their stories, their pitches to the table, then everybody else can kind of chime in, fine-tune it, and then I, as the decider, and eventually Tony Khan, when he comes back in and takes back over, would be the final ultimate decider. I'd sit there, listen to the pitches, and say, okay, let's do that, let's not do that, let's change this, or what other ideas can we come up with in that smart team. They would be broken into individual focus group teams to focus on tag team creative, but when they bring their pitch to the table, everybody at that table gets a voice. And included in this, I will add at least 1 to 2 writers, Hollywood writers. They would not be writing the scripts. This would not turn into WWE. They would be there to make sure that there is coherent storytelling being told. Their exact focus will be storytelling. They will sit in and they will make sure, hey, you're missing a plot beat here, or hey, if we extend this out another week or two or whatever, we could do this beat for beat. Bop, 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 you get the point. So writers are smarter than professional wrestlers in that way, as my booking committee would consist of probably a lot of ex-wrestlers, trainers, that sort of thing. I would also have the writers on staff just backstage. Those same writers after the booking committee, they would be available for talent, as talent would still have the ability to come up with their own pitches. Whereas, let's say FTR is going to relay his information to Matt Hardy, who's the head of the tag team creative. And then at the same, if 2.0 doesn't have anything in mind that they want to do creatively, they could consult with a writer, or a writer could help them flesh out a story that they had in mind that they could bring to a Matt Hardy that will then bring to the table, and blah, 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 blah. That's how the chain of command will work. Individual teams focused on individual parts of the cards, women's, tag teams, main event. We'll work with those talent. They can pitch their own ideas. We'll work with writers to help craft everything and outline a final show. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do creative. And I think creative needs a massive overhaul, and that would be the very first move that I would make. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to go in and we are going to cut ticket costs across the board. Ticket prices, this is one of the main complaints from the actual consumers that are going to these shows. We wonder why AEW is not drawing. Well, for one reason, the creative sucks. Well, now that we've addressed that in our first move, our next move is to adjust the ticket prices so that people can come of all socioeconomic classes. People can bring their families, their kids to these events, and it's not gonna break the bank. We got to get these ticket prices down to a reasonable. You can still keep, ringside seats as a novelty, more expensive in your VIP boxes or whatever, but a lot of your general admission has to be lowered significantly. Even for All In, everybody that's already bought the tickets that went on pre-sale for 2024's All In, had already complained that ticket prices are far jacked up higher than they were for last year's. That can't happen anymore. We are not trying to squeeze every last dollar out of the half of the arena or less that decides to show up to the building. We want to lower the ticket prices so that everybody gets a chance. And along with that, we are going to do better in our local marketing. You should not be a wrestling fan in a 2-hour radius of an AEW show and not hear about it on your radio, see ads on your YouTube or your TV while you're watching Raw, on your podcast player, on the digital billboard while you're driving to work. And there should be fucking people, Danhausen should be at your local comic book store. Or somebody else is on the radio or something, your C and D level talents, your bottom of the card that aren't, you don't need them for anything else. They're not really getting bookings anywhere else. And that's not a knock on Danhausen. I'm just saying he's not at the top of the card. So you can afford to send him to markets, have him show up at comic book stores. You know what I mean? There's people on your card you are not using. Send them to help promote. And just pop that market. Let people know that you're going to be in that bitch. Then make it affordable for them to go. Next, we got to do a hard brand split. This is assuming that Collision is still a thing and doesn't get canceled, or until Collision gets canceled, then we can readdress it. But assuming we have both Dynamite and Collision and Ring of Honor and Rampage, here's how we're gonna work it. Dynamite goes on one tour. Dynamite is exclusive and will also film Rampage. Collision is exclusive and will also film Ring of Honor. So if you go to a Collision show, you get Collision and Ring of Honor. If you go to a Dynamite show, you get Dynamite and Rampage tapings. These will be distinct rosters. There will be distinct styles. We're going to stick with the CM Punk approach to Collision, where Collision is going to be a much more traditional, slower paced show, easy to digest, lots of good sound, old school-esque wrestling. Not that it's got to be just chin locks and shit, but more of a Jim Cornette style of wrestling that he would approve of, if you catch my drift. On the other hand, over on Dynamite, I would keep that more fast-paced, more flippy-floppy, more in-your-face, more of the Young Bucks style-esque presentation. That's where you can put the younger talent that wants to do the crazy shit, and you can keep it more frenetic with the run-ins and everything leads into another, whereas Collision can tell more, have more, video packages and in-ring promos and just be more of a traditional wrestling show. And you divide those rosters and you split them evenly based on talent, because nobody's going to go to a Collision show. If you do not do this, you have too many people on your roster. So if you do not do this, you're going to end up running into a situation where Collision becomes Rampage. That's kind of what's happening now. Nobody cares because they can see everybody they want to see on Dynamite. Stop that. Keep like Edge and Christian over on Collision. Keep belts separate. Keep the trios titles on Dynamite. Keep the tag titles on Collision. Keep the Christian's TBS title on Collision. Keep TNT title on Collision. Keep the women's TBS title on Dynamite, etc. Split those titles. The world champion can float and be involved in any roster with anybody on either side. Keep star power on each side. Edge and Christian on Collision, for example. Young Bucks, Kenny Omega on Dynamite, for example. And then split everybody up accordingly, including your ex-WWE guys, so they're not over saturating one brand or the other, because that's a problem as well. Just keep the roster separate and make them must-see, and people will come out to both shows. And then you're running Rampage on the end of Dynamite, where people, you have more undercard people, and then you got Ring of Honor over on the Collision side, where people can watch that as well. So I think that's a good way to go about that. On to the next. Next one is a brand new head of talent relations. This should not be Christopher Daniels anymore. He is buddies with the Young Bucks. He is buddies with a lot of the talent. He's one of the boys, and he's maybe a little bit too soft. He needs somebody that can deal with some of these hard-headed assholes directly and be that filter between the talent and Tony Khan. It was traditionally a role that Jim Ross did very well, and maybe that John Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace did not so well. But in this position, I saw somebody actually in one of my video comments had recommended, they pitched the idea of Paul White being a good choice for that. And I kind of agree with that. He's a smart guy. He's a professional guy. He's well experienced, and nobody's going to fuck with him. So he's got the experience for being one of the boys, but he's smart enough to be office. I think he's a good choice. Somebody like that. Somebody that's not actively on the roster and not actively just hanging out with, friends with, came up with the boys. I think he's a good fit, or somebody like that. Doesn't have to be Paul White, but he's a good example of somebody I would slide into that spot immediately, and they would just simply play that filter, right? As far as contract shit, as far as complaints, as far as issues, beefs, whatever, all your little bitchy stuff. I think people take advantage of Tony Khan, and I think if it goes through a guy, a no-nonsense motherfucker like a Paul White or even a Mark Henry or somebody like that you already got around, Jeff Jarrett perhaps, then, there's going to be a lot less issues, I think, and a lot less taking advantage of. This next move you're not going to like, but it must be done. We need to cut talent massively. Cut talent across the board. There is some 180 wrestlers on the AEW roster, and I think that's a underestimate. I would cut 80 of those guys. You don't need that many fucking people. You don't. You don't need that many talents. I will not make a list of talents here, but there would be significant cuts and big cuts. There would be people that you would be surprised that would be cut. I guess, without naming any names, one of the first things I would do in those cuts is I would ask who wants to leave, because the last thing you want to do is fire 80 out of 180 people and then find out that, 20 of the people you kept still want to get the fuck out of there. Let those people go first. Your Andrades, your Malachi Blacks, if they want to go. Let all of them go. Anybody. Sit everybody down. If you want to, we're making big cuts. Cuts are coming. If you're somebody who wants out of your contract for sure, right now, you're sick of this place, go ahead and put in your resignation and we'll honor it to a certain level, I guess. Hopefully the whole locker room doesn't quit, but you get the point. Heads are going to roll, and it's just a matter of you gotta save the budget. There's no need for that many talent. There's so many of them just sitting home at the couch, and that's why why they're all bitching and complaining. Have fewer of them and have something for all of them. Next up, we're going to cut the amount of crossover shows and crossover guys. It's fun to do. I'd like to keep the Worlds Collide event going, but anything beyond that needs to be thrown out. We do not need to have this throughout the year where there's all these different New Japan guys coming through and guys from Mexico and all of that. It's fine to do, and I like the concept for a Worlds Collide pay-per-view, and I'm not even opposed to having these talent integrated. It's smart to that. I like that AEW acknowledges the outside wrestling world, and I want them to do that. It's okay to have FTR show up with the AAA tag team titles around their waists, and Kenny Omega having a fucking new title from the US title from New Japan or something. Like, all of that's fun. That's fine. But the problem becomes when you start having too many of these guys show up on AEW television all the time, and you make such a big deal out of them and nobody knows who they are. Now, you could tell that story, but why don't we just save that kind of stuff for just one time a year to appease that fan base? That Worlds Collide will do good business because it's the one time a year that you get crossovers, and let's open up that door a little bit too, even. Let's not just make that between New Japan, but let's, that's when we can invite TNA guys in if they want to throw down GCW or something. Worlds Collide, open the doors, or Forbidden Door, I should say, right? Forbidden Door, not Worlds Collide. Open up the doors, man. Have that one show a year where you can just do your thing, but after that, keep it off the show. Going right along with that, and this one's directed almost exclusively to Excalibur. No more inside baseball. Let's dumb it down for the greater audience. It's fine to do some stuff here and there, these little inside jokes and stuff. Like it's fun to pop, the fans that do pay attention to the little things or that follow all the dirt sheet stuff, but the greater audience doesn't. That's one of the reasons I think is we're not reaching these fans that are, outside of the million max that are loyal to the AEW product, is that they either, as the previous example, they don't know who a lot of these guys are that are just randomly coming in out of nowhere, that are being hailed. You feel like you're left behind. It's a little bit too much inside baseball. And that's not to say, and even with this, what's the big criticism that you get with this Continental Classic? People don't understand it. It's that New Japan weird shit, right? Now, I know there's plenty of people that are like, hey, this is how sports tournaments work. It's really not that hard to understand. You're just not trying. But I think there's something to second guess and just kind of think about it a little bit closer and kind of think to yourself like, look, man, you know what I mean? We're a little bit too much inside baseball. Let's dumb it down for a bigger audience and see how that gets us. At least tone it down significantly. Production needs a complete and total overhaul. I do not like what's going on. In fact, they, speaking of inside baseball, the producer that's been with AEW the whole time, his name was Kevin Sullivan, not the Taskmaster, was fired by Mike Mansouri, who's now their head production guy, who was under the wing of WWE's guy over there. What's it? What the fuck's his name? I forgot his name already. Kevin Dunn, that's his name. Fuck, who cares? Mike Mansouri, under Kevin Dunn, he's brought that production style to AEW. If you look around, you'll now even see that they got the screen on the barricade wall and they got the screen on the camera side of the ring. Stop that shit. That's WWE shit. You're overproducing. You need to rethink the entire way. You got to reinvent the wheel a little bit, and here's what you do. WWE kind of already does it at some pay-per-views, which is, to me, it's a cleaner, it's a better look. It's similar to the way the UFC does it. Let's keep your LED screens all around the all around the arena, the rows of the fans, right? The different layers that you see, the little bars that wrap around. Keep that, and then let's just do the entrance tunnel. just like in the UFC, just like the old Madison Square Garden look. Deck out the entrance tunnel like the Madison Square Garden look. You can make the whole tunnel. You can have sliding doors, opening doors. You can have that whole tunnel. You can build a whole LED screen thing that'll fit that tunnel. But let's do that rather than a whole giant fucking stage. I don't like the stage. I think, not that the stage is bad. It's just, it's such a WWE trope that, like, let's go the opposite way now. Let's lean more into what a UFC might look like or a boxing event. You're still going to have all the production value. You can still have that. And then to counterbalance that, you can have the Tron up in the opposite end. Instead of above the entrance, have it on like the back wall, kind of like the WrestleMania 6 Tron that was there, right? When Hogan was with the Warrior, the Sky Dome Tron that they have up there in Toronto. Something like that. That's how I do it. And you know, we can play around. I'll take your pitches. I'm not saying it has to be hard and fast, but you got to change the look and you got to differentiate it from WWE, not make it more like WWE. I would also add a interview stage too, an old Mean Gene interview stage off to the side from the ring where the entrance, they can come out of the entrance and they can walk up onto a separate stage built into the crowd where people can be interviewed. And I'd have that, like, the crowd is all around the stage, almost like a Taylor Swift concert, you know, where she walks to the end of the stage and people are so close they could literally reach up and touch her if they wanted to, almost. Just like that. It'd be so fun. I think it would be a cool look for wrestling, but hey, that's just me. Switch it up. The ninth big change I would make to AEW, something they did in the past very well that they don't seem to do as much anymore, and that is more mainstream crossover, more celebrities, more try to integrate into the mainstream, have more of an effect on more of an influence on TikTok and be out there where the kids are and stuff. Put your people out there with influencers. Have Darby Allin be out there doing skating shit with the skaters. Have more rappers on your show with Swerve or something. Have Shaq show up again. You know what I mean? Like, these things are cheesy to us casual or to us hardcore wrestling fans. We don't like that stuff. And it's not even that that's going to bring in a new audience, but what that does is it puts you and equalizes WWE. It puts you on, oh, you're also a mainstream product. That was part of the thing with WCW, right? Fucking Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan on the Tonight Show. Bischoff kicking his feet up on the Tonight Show desk. Dennis Rodman, Karl Malone. These are guys that made WCW legitimate. Even in the 2000s when it started to suck, they had the No Limit Soldiers and stuff. Like, it's that kind of stuff's cheesy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's good creative. What I'm saying is it helps widen the brand. It helps get that name brand out there. It's more mainstream. People literally call wrestling that WWE stuff. Wrestling is almost, as much as they tried to rebrand it as sports entertainment, they did succeed in rebranding wrestling. But what they did was they rebranded it as WWE, just like a bandage has been rebranded as Band-Aid. A cotton swab has been rebranded as a Q-tip. Wrestling is WWE. AEW needs to be in the mainstream eye as much as possible, doing mainstream shit. That's what WWE's done from the very start, with Cyndi Lauper all the way up through Mike Tyson and so on. Right now with Logan Paul and Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny is one of the biggest stars in the world. Logan Paul is one of the biggest social media influencers in the world. They are doing everything right. They're so smart. AEW needs to be doing that shit too. Before I get to my number one thing that I would do to change AEW, the biggest thing I would do to change AEW, I want to throw in this little bonus here, and this would be to take Ring of Honor and really just make it NXT. Steal the whole fucking thing. Maybe not the performance center, so to speak, but really make Ring of Honor your developmental. Ring of Honor, if a guy comes into AEW off the indies, they go in through Ring of Honor. They don't go straight to the main roster unless they're already a big star. Run it separately, like its own separate promotion, as they try to do, but no more crossover. None of that fucking Ring of Honor people on AEW people on Ring of Honor. It becomes indistinguishable and waters down both brands. It's a separate brand, going back to the hard brand split. It's a hard brand split. Keep Ring of Honor all by itself. Make it your developmental. Keep a couple top guys in there to make it like, a product that people want to pay for. At the same time, that's where you're going to be developing a lot of your new talent as well. And that's where they can get their reps off air and do that, so to speak. I think that's a good way to go. And finally, the very last change that I would make to AEW to set them up for success, to turn that ship around, to miss that iceberg that WCW hit and sank, and really just be a strong number 2 in the industry for years to come, is to get rid of Tony Khan. Get him out of there. Go away, Tony Khan. Now I get it. Tony Khan owns the company. Can't just fire. He's not going to fire himself. But Tony Khan needs to put his ego in a little bag and fucking throw it under his bed and forget about it. Is he in business to be in business? Or is he a giant fucking mark that's just got enough money to have a real life fig fed and he's just playing? This is just his entertainment. This is what he does when he's not, doing number shit for the football team or whatever the hell else he does. He just scribbles in his notebook his little booking sheets and then spends the money to have other people produce it. That could be, and that's why he's called a mark so goddamn much. He needs to step away. This needs to be a business. If he really feels like this is a business, he can still run it. He can still own it. I talked about earlier the booking committee. There needs to be a decider. Tony Khan can be the decider. He can sit and listen to everybody's creative and say, no, I don't like that. Let's change that. Let's do this different. Just like Vince did. Vince didn't sit down in his little fucking notebook and jot out every single storyline path for every single character on his show, but he just listened to his fucking creative team. After they had their meeting and they came up with all their shit, he would sit down and listen to them and say no, or yes, or change this, add that. That's it. That's all he needs to do. And he needs to have a couple very trusted advisors around him, people that he trusts, people that are loyal to him, and maybe a wiser, older person, as well as a younger, more hip, creative person. Or maybe not even creative, but more just like internet savvy and that sort of thing. Somebody that he can balance, the traditional business with what the new kids are doing these days. That would be a fun way to go. That's what I would do. And stay off of the internet. Stop tweeting. Stop complaining. Stop bitching. Stop doing interviews where you don't answer any questions. Stop where you just ramble through your promotional material. Oh, well, this week we got a great card. I think Kenny Omega's been doing really well. He's undefeated this year. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Stop it. Shh. Go away. Stay in the background. Tony Khan could be a dorky, backstage interviewer. When Vince McMahon started, he was the commentary guy, right? He was an interviewer before that under his dad, but then when he took over, he was commentary. Or he sat at the desk for Tuesday Night Titans or whatever. I think Tony just needs to stay off of TV for a long time. There's really no reason for him to be there. He could be the fictitious character. Tony Khan has made it official. They can still do all that, but keep this guy's fucking... Maybe he comes out, when there's a tragedy, he's standing there, leading the pack on stage. Or when, there's a big fucking Martha Hart trophy to give out or something. I don't fucking know, But other than that, stay away. Because Tony Khan himself is burying the business. People know that this is Tony Khan's company, and the more that he annoys the fuck out of everybody and makes himself sound stupid on the internet, the more people associate his whole company with him as a person, and the more people will turn on AEW because they just don't like Tony Khan. And Tony Khan's insistence on having to run everything and be the creative force behind everything, he needs to stop that. He needs to be a decider, not a creator. He needs to put the best people around him. I don't know who and what places, but I know some people I would want to have close to me are Matt Hardy, Jeff Jarrett. I'd keep Jimmy Jacobs close to me. I'd maybe have Chris Hero down in Ring of Honor doing most of the Ring of Honor stuff. Just have some of these, Jim Ross even, just as a guy to bounce shit off of, just an advisor of sorts. You have these assets around you, you use them. as long as he shuts up and he does all of those things or most of those things, but really just as long as he shuts up and goes away and the creative picks up, I think they can turn this ship around. And I think it could be saved. But I think the more that they keep just doing what they're doing, I think they are destined, because they're fighting against the wind at this point. And I think they're destined to fail if they keep on the same course that they're on right now. But that's just my thoughts. That's just my opinions. Let me know yours down in the comments below. What am I wrong about? What am I right about? What would you change? What's your list, or something I missed? Something you would add, or something that I said you think's perfectly fine and I'm a dumbass? Let me know all of it down in the comments below. Peace, love, and pizza. I am your boy, Seth Grimes. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will catch you in the next video.